Welcome to Lesson 2.2, Internal versus External Pressure. In our last session, you identified real-world triggers, the specific situations, dynamics, or roles that predictively activate stress in your leadership. Now we're going to go one level deeper, because not all pressure is created equal. And if you don't learn to differentiate internal versus external pressure, you'll start responding to everything the same way, carrying more than you need, reacting more than you want, and draining energy in situations where a different strategy would serve you better. This lesson will help you do three things. Number one, identify the difference between internal and external pressure. Number two, understand the performance cost of confusing them. And number three, learn how to shift from overowning to selectively responding. Let's define our terms here. External pressure. This comes from outside of you. It's driven by conditions, deadlines, decisions, client expectations, stakeholder dynamics, or company performance. Internal pressure, that's something that's generated inside of you. It comes from interpretation, beliefs, assumptions, standards, and self-imposed expectations. For example, the board sets a tight deadline. That's external. You tell yourself you can't ask for help and it must not be the perfect time. Let's define our terms. External pressure comes from outside of you. It's driven by conditions, deadline decisions, client expectations, stakeholder dynamics, or company performance. Now, internal pressure, that's generated inside of you. It comes from interpretation, your beliefs, assumptions, standards, and self-imposed expectations. Take, for example, the board sets a tight deadline. That's external. You tell yourself you can't ask for help and it must be perfect the first time. That's internal. Both types of pressure impact performance, but if you treat them the same, you lose your leverage. High performers, especially in leadership roles, often blur the line between internal and external pressure. Why? Because you've been rewarded for taking ownership. You've been praised for being adaptable, fast, and reliable. Over time, you start believing that every problem is yours to fix. But here's the danger. When you internalize too much external pressure, you end up over-functioning, carrying emotional and strategic weight that's not yours to solve alone. And that overload doesn't just impact your energy, it impacts your judgment. Let's make this real for a second. Imagine your team misses a major deliverable. The client is frustrated, your director wants answers, the project is now completely off track. These are external pressures, real consequences, real stakes. But now your mind kicks in. I should have seen this coming. This is my fault. I should have been more hands-on. Now my credibility is on the line. That's internal pressure layering on top of the external events. And in that state, your nervous system escalates. You go into over-control, stress spikes, and performance drops. When everything feels urgent, leadership degrades. Here's why the distinction matters so much. When you treat all pressure as external, you start trying to solve things that aren't yours to fix. You take responsibility for things you can't control, and you miss the opportunity to coach, collaborate, or delegate. On the flip side, when you treat internal pressure as external, you over-prepare, you overcorrect, or escalate unnecessarily. The result? Team tension, cognitive fatigue, broken focus, and reputational stain. Your system is reacting, but not strategically. Let's go deeper into internal pressure. It often shows up as rules you didn't realize you were following, like I must always be the calm one, or I should never need help. How about if someone's disappointed, then I've failed, or I need to prove my value in every meeting. And my favorite, if I slow down, then I'll fall behind. These aren't always conscious, but they drive your behavior and they increase your stress load because they shrink the number of acceptable outcomes and put unrealistic expectations on your leadership identity. Now, let's be clear. External pressure is real. You're working in environments where deadlines, performance reviews, restructures, stakeholder demands, and politics all have consequences. The goal here is not to pretend that pressure is imaginary. The goal is to differentiate what's a real constraint and what's an optional reaction. Once you start separating these two, you create room for strategic thinking instead of emotional exhaustion. Let's try this together. Think for a moment in the past week when you felt pressure rising, and then ask yourself, what part of that moment was driven by external forces? What part was fueled by your own interpretation, standards, or beliefs? For example, was it a stakeholder behavior or your fear of looking uninformed? Was it the real deadline or your belief that rest equals weakness? Learning to separate signal from story is a high-performance skill. Here's a framework you can start using today. If it's external, respond with strategy, clarify, prioritize, communicate, escalate if needed. If it's internal, reflect and reframe. What belief is driving this? Is it useful? Is it true? The combination of external navigation and internal clarity is what makes a leader effective under sustained pressure, because the pressure isn't going away, but how you react with it can evolve. Take 60 seconds and reflect. What's one internal pressure role that's been driving you lately? Is it a need to be seen as the expert? A belief that you must never appear uncertain? A fear of disappointing someone senior? Naming it is the first step to releasing it. In our next lesson, we'll uncover invisible stress leaks that maybe leaders are overlooking, like ambiguity, role conflict, and expectation misalignment. These aren't dramatic breakdowns. They're subtle drains that erode performance over time. When you learn to spot them early on, you can protect your energy, clarity, and team dynamics. I'll see you in lesson 2.3.